Hi, this is Greg with the Investigators Report, and I've got a special guest with me today that I'm going to do an interview with. Over the course of years publishing our newspaper, I come across a lot of interesting people, and the person that I have on the other line with me is Audra Elena, and I'm very happy to bring her on to interview her. I think that this interview would actually encourage a lot of people and help a lot of people because we know that disease is so rampant today, but Audra has a very interesting story. As you can tell, she's a very young lady, and she got sick at a very young age and almost died. And I'm going to bring her on. And Audra, welcome to the show. Thank you for giving me this time to interview you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really honored to be here to tell my story.
So anyway, why don't you pick up? You told me that you got sick at 18 years old. So kind of give our audience the gist of what has happened to you, because I think this is quite a fascinating story that they need to hear.
Sure, absolutely. So when I was 18 years old, I went on a trip to the Bahamas. I was pretty fortunate to be able to do that, to go on my first cruise, and was really excited. And it was an unusual temperature climate issue that year. And so I didn't know that, but I went to the beach and at night, and while I was on the beach, I was bitten by bugs. I was swarmed by bugs, and I was bitten over 100 times. And I'd never been sick a day in my life until 5 days from those bites. I began to have what I now know is seizures. And so that began a whole process in our family. And this was, I'm 38 now, and so this was 20 years ago. So it was very unusual, to say the least, for an 18-year-old, seemingly healthy young lady to just all of a sudden begin to have seizures. So we began, as only we knew at that time, to go and seek medical treatment. And we went to Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which is a very renowned university school. And after much testing, they realized that I had lesions on my brain. And at that time, if they didn't tell you were crazy, they told me I had MS. So it was, one of, how that goes.
Yeah.
So because of the lesions, they said, we feel like this is really MS, and but we still have to wait it out to get a confirmed diagnosis. So you're just going to have to deal with it. And they started trying to manage the symptoms of the seizures, and that wasn't successful, really. But at first, the seizures were the only thing that was happening. And day after day, new symptoms would add upon symptoms. So then there was fatigue, and then there was sleep issues and eating issues, and then there were blood pressure, heart, and eventually pain, very widespread pain. And so we're a couple of years into this, and I would just like to say at the same time, I had lost my insurance. So we were in the midst, in the time that I got sick, of getting new insurance, and we were in that 30-day waiting period. And this all occurred in that time. So by the time that I went to the hospital and they saw all these things, I wasn't eligible anymore to get any kind of coverage. So, my family really began to struggle financially because of that. And a little background on my family and how I grew up is I grew up on the road, kind of like the Partridge Family. Imagine that. And we traveled around the country in a bus over 300 days a year. And we sang all of my life for a living together as a family. And so all of this was occurring. We still had to do that because that was our living. But, just navigating this new world that we had come into in the medical community and thinking, truly, we're going to get some help here. And what we found 2 and 3 years into it was we weren't. I was having a seizure every day. Okay. I was having to be carried to the restroom I couldn't drive anymore, just very debilitated at a very young age. So as that process went on, eventually in 2001, I became disabled through the state of North Carolina, and diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, possibly lupus, irritable bowel, tachycardia, all of those things. And I realized very quickly that the cure for what I needed wasn't where I was searching. So, I went to Duke University. As a last-ditch effort, I went to the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida. While I was at the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida, they never took a drop of blood from me. They put a Holter monitor on, took some urine, and did an EEG that I'd had done thousands of times. And they took me in a room and they said with certainty that the reason that I was in the state that I was, and they saw 20 girls a week that were like me, is because I needed to be put in the hospital, go under hypnosis.
Oh my gosh.
To figure out who raped me. Because that's where everything was coming from. And I will tell you, Greg, at that point, I was done. Emotionally, things were continuing to get worse, and I was not able to eat. There was just so many things that were happening. And I thought, that's the Mayo Clinic. My family had gone bankrupt because we were paying out of pocket to do these things. And I had been to naturopaths. We went to California. Every herb, every natural approach, we knew that there was the answer out there, but we just didn't know where to go to get it. And I just wanted to survive long enough to find it, honestly. And so I will very quickly go into about 10 years ago, I found a doctor in Oklahoma, and his name is Dr. Paul Harris, and he's just been a blessing to me in my life. And he began to do some digging, really digging, and he found definite gluten sensitivities, tons of those things. But he sat me down, and this is very important, and I never tell my story without saying this. He sat me down and he said, Audra, I want to talk about emotional things. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. No, I'm not interested in that. He said, well, it affects everything. He said, everything does have a frequency, whether you like it or you don't. And, I want to know who you think you are. In your mind's eye, what do you see? And I didn't even hesitate. And I said, well, I'm sick. And he said, well, then you are.
Huh.
And I said, what? He goes, listen, I see the test. I see the manifestations. The head guy at Tulsa, at St. Francis Hospital in Tulsa, Oklahoma, took a look at my case and told Dr. Harris, leave her alone. She's going to die. And he said, no, get on a plane and get here. And those are the words that he spoke to me. He said, let me tell you something. I see the data that tells me you're not making anything up. He said, but if you truly believe in your heart that you're sick and that you're going to die, then you're going to die no matter what I do.
Wow.
And I said, well, you need to tell me how to change that, because that's not what I want. And he said, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And he said, and faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word. And part of this has to do with what you say coming out of your mouth that you hear and that you believe in your heart. And I said, right, I'll take that. And at that minute, I decided I was going to live until I died instead of dying while I lived.
Wow.
So used to every doctor saying, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. And I'd spent all this effort trying to not die, and I wasn't living. So I took that. Now, I continue to learn about how this body works and how this machine that the Creator created what it takes, the fuel that it takes. And I did my best, and so did so many people, to put together the right protocol to make that work. And, you know, it just didn't. But my mind, I was living above it. I was still in pain every day, still dealing with the same thing. I have at that time, two small children, which was a miracle in itself. I had suffered 3 miscarriages in that time. And just the miracle of even having children is another story unto itself.
Wow.
Anyway, so it came to 4 years ago, I had been diagnosed with interstitial cystitis, and it had gotten to the point that I was going to Wake Forest every week for installations into your bladder, because that was the only way to control the pain of it. And they had done surgery on my bladder, and they had done hysterectomies, appendectomies, tonsillectomies, you know, just started taking everything out. And so I got to about almost 4 years ago now, and I contracted some sort of bacteria or something that they couldn't identify. My spleen began to be very swollen and stuck out of me, and my heart was having issues. And so I came and I laid in my bed, and you don't know where I'm at right now, but I'm actually in my bedroom, and pointing right here, I'm saying in my bed. And my dad came over, and he sat next to me, and he said, Audra, he said, I was reading in the scripture, and he said, and the life of the flesh is in blood. And he said, and honey, you have death in your blood, and we have to figure out why and what to do about it. And an hour later, a friend of ours from Tennessee called. He said, I'm sitting here and I'm working with a doctor. I'm looking at a doctor who works with live blood. And I thought about Audra, and I just had to call you today. And Daddy said, well, you know what? Not really funny, but we were just talking about that, and get her an appointment. So he did. And I thought so little of that appointment that it was a 4-hour drive for me, that I took a friend. I wouldn't even take my parents. They had been put through so many doctor's appointments that I was like, no, don't worry about it. I'll go to this one. And so we did, and she put my blood under a very powerful microscope, took 8 drops of my blood, and began to look at it. And she realized very quickly that I had a terrible parasite, she saw 8 full-grown adults in 1 drop of my blood, and larvae in the cell. And she said the red blood cell was so degraded, all of them were so degraded, that she had seen cadaver blood look better. And she point blank said, your faith is the only reason that you're walking around today, because medically, I don't see life in your blood at all.
Wow.
And I said, well, what do we do? And she said, we're going to fix it. I said, okay, how do we fix it? And she handed me this green bottle right here, and these sachets. All she said was, you put this right here in your water, you shake it up, and you drink 4 of those a day to start out with, and you take this right here. And it was it is a palladium-based, alpha lipoic acid-based compound. And that's all she said. I didn't know what was happening. And let me rewind to, in between all of this happening, the toxic load of those parasites and what they left behind became too much for my heart. And I suffered a heart attack in March of 2014.
Wow.
So, I mean, lots of stuff was really going on, but I began to do those things. And in my studies, as you will well know, we know that disease cannot live in an alkaline environment. It cannot. And again, I didn't know what I was doing, but I also knew that our bodies were at least 70% water, and the other parts were minerals. And I mean, those were just fun facts. And I thought all water was created equal. I didn't drink tap water. I just, drank bottled water and thought I was doing the right thing. And I came to learn that really the 2 things that we don't make these bodies are water and minerals. And so what I found after months then of recovery, very slowly, it was about 6 months later, that the makers of this product that you stick down, this little sachet that you put down in the water, held 72 minerals, trace minerals that came from live coral. And they were the same spectral signature as our bones. And what happened when they got put into the water and it was agitated, it broke apart the H2O molecules, where they have been cleaned or stuck together so much that they're literally too big to fit into the cell. And what that did was it literally made the water wetter. It made the molecules smaller. And then it infused those 72 minerals right into the blood cell. It made it to where it could go into my blood. And it began that life-giving process. And I didn't learn about that until, like I said, about 7 or 8 months later. My dad went to Hampton, Virginia, where the company was based, which is Zuma Worldwide. And he went through, they took his blood. He saw the differences that it made in a very short amount of time. He came home and he said, we've got this all wrong. Everything that we're drinking is without life. And that's the foundation of who we are, is water and minerals. We have to have those in the correct order. And so through that and several other things, but before that, in between that time, I met you, Greg. I met you, I don't know, what, 3.5, 4 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not really sure when we met.
It was, I just started by phone. I mean, I didn't actually meet you. I'd never even seen your face until today through this. But I began to research Temple Cleanse, and I had for almost 20 years, such trouble in that area and such pain and heartache. They had colitis and different issues in the bowel. And I'd also learned that 70% of our immune system is in our gut. It has direct relationship between our gut and our brain. And so I found Temple Cleanse, which is, I always have it. I'm a huge proponent of this, and I began to take it, and it took away so much stress from the day-to-day. I don't ever wonder. I would go days constipated, all those things, and such a beautiful experience. And for years, it's just been the most wonderful thing. And once a month, I talk to you, and I'm like, well, it's that time again. And so what I get to is, though, for the 3.5 years that I began doing the regimen that I'm doing, which included some of the alpha lipoic acid compound, majorly the water, and then this one other product called Focus Up, which has a lot of brain foods in it that helped my immune system start communicating with the rest of my body. So those connections, I like to say, your immune system, when you have an autoimmune, that's what they throw that around a lot. It's like your immune system is in a dark room and there's a bat flying around and you have a broom. And your immune system is trying really hard. It knows there's a bat in that room, but it can't see it. And Focus Up and the things that are in there really have turned that light on so that my immune system can target what it needs to target, at the same time being foundationally upheld by the water and the minerals. And periodically, over the last 3.5 years, about every 6 months, I'll have my blood tested again. And I will say March of this year, and there was always improvement, but it was always still really bad. Because you don't spend 17, 18 years in a condition, and with the pharmaceuticals that I'd had, people suffering with migraines, I can understand. For 5 years, I had a migraine straight. No matter how many infusions they did, no matter how many times I put Imitrex in my leg, all of those things, I get where you are and how frustrated it is and complicated. It's one area than another. But it took every consistent, persistent, every day. And in March of this year, I had my blood tested, and I want to tell you, it's perfect.
Wow.
Perfect. And you really have to be a very, very healthy teenager to keep up with the pace that I live in my life. I began to take ballroom dance lessons. Now I'm a ballroom dance teacher. I continue to sing. I have to wonderful young children from mine and others that are on their way into my life. I'm able to expand who I take care of now. And I'm very physically active. And my mission, as long as I laid in that bed and I thought, what's the purpose of my life? What's the purpose of somebody rolling me down the hall to the restroom and my children, you know, coming by my bedside and me looking out that window right there and watching them play, and I couldn't do it with them. You know, what's the purpose in all of that? That I know that there are words in the popcorn of the ceiling because I've stared at it for so many years that I've created that there are words in there. And I will say it's hope, it's restoration, it's math, it's perfection, it's orchestration. It's the way that our Creator created these amazing machines that if you give them the right things, that they can regenerate and heal. And my soul and my spirit had to do that first. That greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world mentality had to take over while my body was still failing me. And then that rose to meet where my spirit was. So now I feel a very whole approach, and I feel very passionate that my experience over the last 20 years has not been in vain.
Wow, that's an amazing story, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us. Let me ask you this. When you said you got bit by a bunch of bugs when you were on vacation, what kind of bugs were they? Do you know?
Well, that was what was interesting. It was pitch dark on the beach. And so all I knew was that when they bit me, they hurt. I was swarmed, and it left marks for over 2 weeks. I couldn't shave my legs or anything for several weeks after it. So I really wasn't sure of what it was, if it was a biting fly or if it was just a really big mosquito at that point. And that was something that had always kind of stuck in my mind. But when they did the live blood readout, the parasite that they categorized it as was malaria.
Wow.
I do have some pictures of, and it would make sense because my spleen was sticking out, and that's one of the places that happens, something that happens with malaria. And people say, well, how did you live that long without it? Well, a lot of these natural remedies that I was doing was keeping it at bay. But the one thing that I did change, and why things kind of got to the way that they were 3.5 years ago, was I began, because I went into menopause from the hysterectomy, I began to take hormones. And a lot of those are made with bovine serum and things like that. Well, not knowing that I had that type of parasite that I was trying to keep under control, it caused it to reproduce very, very quickly. Because I was feeding it the wrong things. And that manifested itself. I don't have interstitial cystitis any longer. You know, they thought that they had done bladder surgery. They said to me, you're going to have your bladder taken out. I laughed at them. That's just like not. And other people were saying, do you know they grow bladders? I have a friend that actually grows bladders. And I'm like, y'all, I don't even know if you hear yourself talking. This is much. It's a little much. And that immediately in those months, I've never had any other trouble with that at all. My spleen took about 1.5 years before it actually stopped being all the way swollen. And I honestly feel, Greg, that just in the past 8 or 9 months that I can say I'm at that homeostasis of where I want to be to continue. And let me tell you another thing. You don't spend this much time being ill and not have ramifications in your body and weakened places in your body. I am not suggesting that I can cure or any of those kinds of things. I have to walk a very faithful line with the regimen that I stay on every day. And if I lapse in that, then there are consequences for me. I don't have the reserve that other people have. So this is the rest of my life, and gladly it'll be the rest of my life to take care of what my soul resides in for while I walk this earth. And hopefully my story can help others to live more fully.
You touched on something that was really, really important that, you know, I didn't really get turned on to this until about maybe 7, 8 years ago myself. And that is how important it is, the words that we speak. Where you got the diagnosis from this guy in Oklahoma who basically said, do you want to live or do you want to die? And I know in this world today, it seems upside down and backwards to say that, you know, you can speak things away. Yet we know from the scriptures, it says in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Jesus is the living Word. So we know that the words that we speak, they have power, they have life, and they can bring healing. And I think that's one of the biggest things. And that's probably, like you said, why you're still here today, even though, you know, there's supplements and things. And I agree with that on the supplements. We have to do everything we can with these bodies to take care of them, to give them the right water, the right minerals, the right nutrition. But the words that we speak, boy, how important that is. And if people can really get a hold of that, speaking life over your body and actually speaking things out of your body, commanding things to be gone in the name of Jesus, that you take no ownership over it, really is what seems to hit the nail on the head here with this interview talking to you, which I think makes the most sense of anything.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting too, what you just said, taking ownership. A lot of times you'll walk around and I did this. So I would say, my chronic fatigue syndrome, my heart attack, well, they're not mine. That's not, that's just what happened to the vehicle that I walk around in. That's not my identity. And when I started realizing that that was a separate thing, it changes everything. It changes everything in every relationship, not just the relationship that I have with my body, but the relationship that goes forth to my family and how I train the children to speak life. We're so used to negativity and creating a victim kind of mindset. I did that, and I thought that that was what you did. I didn't know any differently, and now I have tools that say differently. And so all of those things work together. The knowledge is the biggest thing. You have knowledge about the scripture says we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but with principalities and powers and rulers of darkness in high places. And my thought is, I've never seen a principality or power walking down the street. You know, what are they? What does that mean? And what I came to understand is those things in your head that you hear that sound like you, that are talking and saying, you're not good enough, you're sick, you're this, you're that. They aren't in agreement with a kingdom that I want to stay in agreement with. And what I did for many years, not that I caused any of these on myself, and some people think that, you know, they say, well, if you had enough faith for this or this or this, it wouldn't be like that. And I say that everything that has occurred in my life has been ordained so that I could understand very intimately and then communicate that clearly to whomever I come across. But those principalities and powers, we make an agreement with that voice in our head. Well, you're not pretty, or you look old today, or, you know, you're not as smart as that person over there. You immediately decide if that's true. And what my measure now is, would my Heavenly Father say that to me?
Absolutely not.
He wouldn't. Then that's not what I accept in my spirit. And I began speaking that out loud. And I would say when those thoughts, I don't accept that. That's not who I am. That's not what I want to, that's not what I am loved. He said, behold, when he created me, it was good. He said, I was the apple of his eye. And he said, by his stripes, I am healed. And he also, you know, talks about knowledge. So he's given me knowledge on the spiritual, on the emotional, and then on the physical. And so all of those things, one without the other, is just one without the other. It's
Spirit,
not.
soul, and body, right?
Yeah.
Spirit, soul, and body. Scriptural. It's all three of them are connected.
Very much so.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, looking at you, you would never know that you went through 20 years of really almost living hell, and that you almost died numerous times. And here you've had all these body parts cut out now, and yet you would never know if somebody saw you on the street, like, wow, look at that girl. She's fit, healthy, vibrant, full of life. And what an amazing testimonial. Really is. That's why I wanted to interview you. I'm sure it's going to encourage some people out there.
Well, I pray so. I pray so. And I'd love to talk to any one of them. You can get in touch with me. I have an email address. And Greg, I don't know if you can put that on the screen, but
I don't know if I can, but go ahead and give it out. So I know you have info that people can get in touch with you about. So go ahead and give your information out.
So you can reach me at dream a little, DREAM a little .dream @yahoo.com. Email me. And, you know, there are a lot of different things on the market that we know, but we also, sometimes I felt like we're throwing things at the wall and hoping something sticks. And so it's really great to have a resource of people like Greg and like myself who have lived, who understand, who make it their life's work to study that are going on and to equip you with tools. So I would love to speak with any one of you. Please email me and I will definitely get back to you and help you in any way I'm supposed to.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, Audra. That was a great interview.
Oh, thank you for all that you do. You're an amazing. You've helped me in so many ways, and even more. You keep rocking that Temple Cleanse. I'm telling you. I more and more every day. 5 or 6 people they call every day. I'm like, oh, that Temple Cleanse is the best thing I've ever had.
It's one of our best-selling products. I've had it on the market for, I don't know, 14 years, 15 years. And I have hundreds of customers like you that say the same thing. They can't live without it. They order it regularly.
You have to. So we gotta eliminate, we've got to hydrate, we've got to be alkaline, and we've got to have ourselves communicate, and then we've got to speak life. There's our prescription for the day.
There you go. All right. Awesome. Well, God bless you. I appreciate everything.
Thank you.